All right, so I think it's time to move on to our main segment, the hero segment of this, and something that Ender is chomping at the bits to get to, and that is the deciphering of the Jedi texts. Now, folks, this is going to be like a TED Talk, so take notes, add them, and update your lore Bibles, because this is going to be super, super revealing, and super, super interesting to me, because, again, just in passing, having someone drop Aeonomicon or Aeonomica in general was like, it is just crazy. It's like, so I mean, I expect someone to know the Chronicles of Bruce Boo, because we've been talking about it and how Rey trained and learned healing from that, but this is all lore that we just kind of disseminate in passing. But just like to meet someone that just drops these Jedi texts, and to learn that they've deciphered it. So Ender, we're gonna shift to Jedi texts, and I'm gonna bring up the appendix, and you can take over from here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I've prepared far too many slides, and we're probably gonna speed through some of them. But first, I wanted to start with very TED Talk lecture, professorial stuff here. What do we mean when we say the Sacred Jedi Texts? Well, what is a sacred text? You can answer, or they can be rhetorical questions.
Well, they're what we learned Luke has based his entire training on, since he doesn't have a lot of people that can train him. Force ghosts can't stay there indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they are in the real world. Sacred texts are not exclusively like it's easy to assume that we mean something like the Bible, that is treated as authoritative and infallible. But historically and throughout cultures of the world, a sacred text is any writing or collection of writings held as sacred by individuals, groups, or institutions. And it does not imply that it was intended to be sacred. So there are a lot of ancient writings that became sacred after they were written, and there are a lot of. It also doesn't mean that they were intended to be. Sorry, it doesn't mean that they are regarded as divine or irrefutable.
Like Lucas's original scripts.
Right, like Lucas's original scripts. Yeah, and yeah, some people are saying page turners they were not, and Luke didn't even read them, and we're going to get into all of that. So we don't know what the Jedi Order looked like at the time that most of these texts were compiled. And we don't know what they looked like when they were handed down and regarded as sacred. We only know what the Jedi look like within the last 1,000 years of the galactic history that we've been shown.
Yeah.
And that's another important thing to keep in mind, that these writings may not reflect our modern conception of what a Jedi is or believes in. The Jedi Order has been around for thousands of years, and it would be bold to assume that it has looked the same. It doesn't even look the same in the few hundred years from the end of the High Republic to the whatever Rey's new Jedi Order will be.
Yeah, and considering we have, they're talking about James Mangold movie being 25,000 years in the past. Yeah, there's a lot of change, a lot of time and change likely to be in that time period.
For sure. So, so then this when we say the Sacred Jedi Texts, we shouldn't assume that these 7 volumes, or sorry, these 8 volumes are the beginning and ending of all of the texts that are regarded as sacred by the Jedi, or that were, or that might someday be. But they are the ones that Luke has collected into a library on Octo, and that Rey has taken with her to begin her training as a Jedi Knight. So, I'm trying to think what the best way to get into this is, and it's probably we'll talk about if we go to the next slide, maybe.
Trying to. Hold on. Oh, I was on the wrong one. Hold on. There we go.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the languages of the Sacred Jedi Texts.
This is awesome.
So the most common writing system used in the Jedi texts is Proto-Besh, which is an alphabetic script that is at least dating earlier than 5000 BBY, and it may have been used as late as 1 BBY on Jeddah. There is some graffiti written in Proto-Besh on Jeddah during the Imperial occupation. And this alphabet was used to write the ancient Koramaic language. So if you hear about Jedi tokens that use that feature Koramaic runes, they are probably this alphabet. And yes, you can screenshot all of this, and I will also be posting it elsewhere soon. And also there is a new font being used in the Acolyte series, indicating that it was used for Jedi ships even as late as the High Republic era. And there are 2 variations of it seen in the Jedi texts. One that the above one here, that's more fluid and colorgraphic, and then the second one that's more boxy and rigid, which is used for writing more condensed passages of text. And importantly for us, it does correspond perfectly to the Latin alphabet, which means that we can transcribe exactly what they say, even if that contradicts canon, and we will.
I feel like we've seen some of these glyphs in the World Between Worlds.
You've seen similar ones, but not these ones precisely.
Gotcha.
I have checked, but you might have seen them either at Galaxy's Edge or on Dryden Voss's yacht on the ancient data plaques.
That was the first light, right?
Yep, aboard the first light. Correct. Okay, next slide. Because this is not the only alphabet used in writing the Jedi texts.
One moment.
There are also a number of alphabets that are not officially identified anywhere. So I'm giving fake names to them until, just as placeholders, until there's a canonical explanation given. This one I call Tythonian algebra because it seems to represent numerical data. It's used in graphs a lot. There are at least 25 of these symbols used.
That's awesome.
And they look sort of like this. And I've arbitrarily decided how to sequence them as numerals for a base 25 positional numbering system. But again, there's no canonical basis for these number assignments. Next slide.
Lucasfilm, get in contact with Ender. Get it canonized.
Right?
Okay, so this one is another one that's not identified anywhere. This is Burkean cursive, is what I'm unofficially calling it. This is some sort of cursive script dating again to before 5000 BBY, and I'll get into how we know that later. It often appears in the context of navigational charts, and because this script has no official translation, I will call it, I'm naming it after Dan Burke, who originally designed the pages on which it appears. And I make no attempt to assign meaning to it, because it's even deciding where letters begin and end would be.
I was going to say, my doctor uses this.
Yes, that's true. A lot of doctors.
I didn't know they studied it.
The second line at the end looks like it's a 2. It's the 1, isn't it? From your algebra?
Oh, that's possible.
That's all I can make out, but it's
they are used together frequently, so possibly. Next page, please. So then there's also Kitasakulian. I don't know if I'm saying it right. This one is named after Chris Kitasakul. Kitasakul, I don't know how to say the name. Who also who designed this for one of the Jedi texts. And I assume that he's the one who designed the lettering, but it only occurs in one context, so it's hard to say. I've assigned a syllabary to it, so that you could use it for writing text, because it has far more than 26 letters. So it's not possible to represent Latin directly with it. So we can't perfectly translate it. And we'll get more into that later.
This is for Japanese
next
people.
Slide. Also occurring on the Jedi texts, but not in them, is Arabesh, which is mostly alphabetic script used since it's in common usage by 300 BBY, which is during the High Republic era. I don't know if it was used prior to that, but we'll get into that as well, I'm sure. And this is the most common alphabet used in Star Wars, but it's not the exclusive one. So if we can move on to the next page.
I've seen a lot of this.
Okay, so this is what I'm calling former Draethos, named after the species of Jedi Master Odan who established the great Jedi library on Ossus. How do you say that one?
I say Ossus.
Okay. I've always said Ossus in my head, and I hadn't ever heard anybody else say it out loud. So we'll get into this one later, but it is identical to Old Persian, actually.
It looks like it too, yeah.
Yeah, it is 1-to-1, in fact. So we'll also be translating some of that as we get into this. Next slide. There are these
Mara
glyphs.
Jade? Oh, sorry.
No, this is named. I named this Marabesh after because it looks like the glyphs used on the Disneyland ride Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye. They don't actually match Marabic, which is what that script is called. But
so it's Marabish.
yeah.
I like it. I like it.
There's also references to Taiwanese being used in the Jedi texts. Taiwanese in Legends was the in-universe name for what we would call the Greek alphabet. But since we don't have any further information to back that up as being canonical, I'm not going to picture the Greek alphabet and assume that it's correct. And then there's Sarianan runes, which are the ones across the bottom. And that's a script used side by side with Arabesh on the cover of one of the Jedi texts. And this script has no official name or translation. And so this guide, we'll just call them Sarianan runes after similar looking symbols featured in Star Wars Adventures Journal number 8, Story Scouts Dispatch. So that you can
That's
go cross-reference.
I like the notes at the end. No attempt is made in this guide to assign meaning to this script.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just want to be straightforward. Sometimes I'm assigning meaning and sometimes I'm not, and it is arbitrary.
Yeah.
So if we can go back to the very first slide real quick. There's one more thing I want to say about the very first page. So throughout this book, we're going to refer to the Jedi texts in Luke's library as JT01 through JT08, starting at the Ionomicum 1 on the left side of his library and the Ramagon at the right-hand side. And that's just to have clear reference because we don't know what the names of all of them are. And we don't know, and for the names that we do have, such as the Chronicles of Bruce Boo and Poetics of a Jedi, we don't have identification with a book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we can go to slide 9. In Tross, we see several of the books, and we'll get to that. I'll point out which ones are in the Rise of Skywalker. KG. Okay. So then there are a bunch of other writing systems used throughout the galaxy, especially in ancient times.
Zepho, nice.
There are Zepho runes, which, based on some information that I've gleaned, probably overlap in time period with the Jedi texts, and so they might appear somewhere in the Jedi texts, but we haven't seen it. There are also Macquarie runes. That's not an official name, or it's a semi-official name. These are runes based on Rolf Macquarie sketches.
These
and
look like the
illustrations.
ones from World Between Worlds.
That would be correct. These ones occur in the World Between Worlds. And they've been used to write the Old Tongue and the Sith language Ur-Katat, as well as modern writing, such as Boba Fett's throne. And then Domabesh is also another precursor to Arabesh, likely dating to 5000 BBY or earlier, which adorned the walls of the Holy City Nijeda, as well as the Sith Temple of Exar Kun.
Nice.
And yeah,
I mean,
so
I kind of want the McCroy runes. Like, I could see that as a tattoo. Like,
oh, for sure.
Instead of a tribal tattoo, it's just
yeah. I mean, an arm strip of the whole entire alphabet or the runes.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
And then it would later come out that Ender has successfully translated it all, and you have just like the fox jumping over the on your arm.
I can, if anybody needs reference for tattoo art based on any of these ancient scripts, I would be happy to advise so that you don't get water bottle written in ancient Zepho. Yeah, so let's move on to the next slide. I think we're going to start, or I guess, which books are people most interested in? Unless you're just going to do them in order.
Yeah, we could probably do them in order. I think we can start with JT01, the Aeonomicum 1, right?
Yep.
I think that's this. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So the Ionomica was a collection of early writings and correspondence among the first Jedi, or the first people to explore and codify the Force. They might be pre-Jedi or proto-Jedi. It's bound in 2 volumes, which were compiled by Jedi Master historian Riley Howell. The first volume, this one, JT01, the Ionomicum 1 or Volume 1, contains annotations attributed to Jedi Master Odan Ur, founder of the Great Jedi Temple on Ossus, This suggests that it was compiled sometime prior to his death, so before 3996 BBY, while many of its writings are likely far older than that. At some point, the parts of the Ionomica were duplicated and stored in holocrons, but these holocrons are now lost. Both volumes came into Jedi Master Luke Skywalker's possession sometime before 28 ABY. Sorry. The cover is made of organosilicon hide, so something like a space slug hide.
Nice.
And etched with decorative patterns. And the volume contains marks and notes from Jedi librarians across the centuries.
I would have loved to have a book bound by Geimer.
All right.
Does that imply that if you lick it, you get high?
Yeah, depends on how many licks does it take to get to the center of Ionomicum.
More than I want to find out about. All right, next one. Next slide. So, what does it contain? These are things that we know canonically are contained in this book. There are references to Tythonian wildlife, including the notable beasts of Tython. We don't know when or where or how long this was written or by whom. Lightsaber diagrams, illustrated depictions of lightsaber construction. It is unclear whether these are hypothetical, experimental, or instructional in nature. And it's written by author or authors unknown. There's also the unsolved theorem of Jedi Master Thorpe, which is a hyperspace plotting conundrum posed to Padawan learners. There's also a solution to the problem, referred to as the Faces of Mortis. And we'll get to all of this in greater detail. Whether the theorem or solution are originals or copies is unknown. Again, we don't know who wrote them, except that probably the theorem was first proposed by Master Chui Tuo Thorpe.
Chiwetel Ejiofor?
What was that?
The actor Chiwetel Ejiofor. I was just sounded like that.
No, the name actually comes from the first known attempt by George Lucas of writing Star Wars. Included a character named Chewie Two Thorpe.
Where are these slides from? They're from the person that is speaking right now, who has deciphered all of this at Auric Fonts or Ender.
Yeah, so the known contents, this is actually specifically from the visual dictionaries primarily, as well as novelizations and things said in the movies. It also contains a visualization of the chain worlds theorem, also known as the world between worlds or vergent scatter. We don't know who wrote it or when or why, but apparently there's something to do with hyperspace and vergences, and the world between worlds is all one interconnected theory.
That's probably Jedi Master Dave.
I was gonna say Master Choco has been talking about that for like years and years. So, just putting that out there.
I mean, I see the connections for sure. I mean, when the Loth Wolves hyperspace walk, they are going into the world between worlds, so I'd imagine there's a connection there.
Mr. Whiteboards himself, Filoni. Yeah. that would be who has the chain worlds theorem. It's probably Jedi Master Whiteboard or Jedi Master Filoni for sure.
It would be Enolif if naming conventions are dry. There's a Jedi Master on the Survivors of Order 66 list called Elus Selrak, which is Charles Soule.
Great. Yeah, Bull Run 27, I will be posting these probably on Twitter after this stream.
Is at Orc Fonts on Twitter too?
Yes, that's my Twitter account.
Go follow
some of
Orc
them
Fonts.
have been posted previously, but I've updated them specifically for this stream. Next slide, please.
Also, you can check out the Arc Fonts GitHub, and I'll don't do it right now, but I'll drop a link in the chat. Go back to it later.
Yeah, so here we get to the first literal translations from the Jedi texts. And I'll jump over. A lot of these are mostly nonsense. You've got a lot of...
This first one on the top left is not nonsense. That is Choco's nighttime name, Don Space Boo.
So remember that these pages were designed by Dan Burke, and then look at Dan and Space Boo.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that that's him signing his work. And
Okay.
power to him.
I mean, I'm forever using Space Boo though.
Yeah. So we have on the left, we have the Force is strongest, the Force flows freely, the Force is all. So that's some pretty basic Jedi stuff. We have beware anger and fear the dark side.
That's an interesting sentence to be in a Jedi text.
Mm-hmm.
I get beware anger and the dark side, but to fear it is like...
But I mean, we don't know the full...
Yeah.
Right. Well, it could be saying beware anger and fear. The dark side are they, you know?
Oh, yeah.
The punctuation is all over the place on here.
No.
And then we have Sizakwe. And
which sounds like it sounds like vodka, to be honest, like some type of flavored vodka, and it sounds delicious.
Right. And then we get the first. Oh, Zakul. That could be. Then we get the first instance of reference to Jedi crystals. Oh right, I forgot to say the Ionomicum 1, which we are currently looking at, is one of the texts seen in The Rise of Skywalker. We do see the interior of this book briefly, and this little scrawl on the bottom left of the right page says split pieces can be no longer used to channel the Force. Failed pieces are highly volatile.
Wow.
And this is a reference to kyber crystals. And we'll get how we know that later, because there's some repeated text. Bits of this are repeated in other contexts. So then most of the rest is either unreadable or not meaningful.
Yeah.
Like we have more Space Boo, we have P1, P5, P2, and P4 labeling a diagram. So let's go on to the next slide.
I just want to let everybody know my next Dungeons and Dragons or D&D character is Sin Fonpei.
Good. Sin Fonpei. So here we have the one instance of former Drethos. So although the in-universe meaning of this script is unknown, the text is taken from a real-world document written in Old Persian by Abu Rayhan al-Biruni. Direct translations are provided to the best of my ability as someone who does not speak Old Persian. I've done my best here to research this correctly. But this diagram of the phases of Mortis, as it's labeled in the visual dictionary, comes from a book on the phases of the moon. And so we have labeled full moon, moon's center, dark moon, moon of the eighth night, and light of the sun, which actually still makes sense in the context of the phases of Mortis, because it's still following the phases of a celestial body. And on the right here is the actual original illustration that was actually copied and pasted into the Jedi texts by the artist who designed it.
That's crazy, because if I recall correctly, and we pay attention to the amount of times Mortis goes through a full cycle, when the sun is at his most powerful and when the landscape is scorched, it is the 8th cycle.
That might be.
I mean, I don't think we're able to fully track how many times day and night happens, but we can see that it is going through phases during the episode. Mm-hmm. That would be awesome if it was the 8th night.
And this is proposed as a solution to Thorpe's unsolved theorem, by the way. Ooh. I don't know how or why, but apparently this will help you plot hyperspace routes. Next slide.
Ascendancy needs these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then we have this last page has a lot of text, and everybody please clap because it was very blurry and I did translate it. It's
everyone at home, there better be applause happening right now, just behind your computers. Everyone.
So here we get a lot of text about the alignment and use of kyber crystals in lightsaber design. So it says ignition ignition process. Once the crystal is aligned, standard is critical. This stage ignition process once aligned alignment. So there's a lot of repeated text. This is one area where page turners, they are not.
Yeah.
Because the designer writing this page loops through a lot of the same text over and over again because he's actually just copying it down from his computer.
Yeah, this is the ipsum lorem of.
Yeah, so over on the right-hand side, there is actually an instance of lorem ipsum appearing verbatim in the in the Jedi texts. So, yeah, there's this part that says the Force flows freely. This means nothing to me, which I think is a great highlight from the Jedi texts. I like to imagine that that's literally what a Jedi wrote, that whoever they were very, very bored of writing this all down. And so they're like, the Force flows freely. This means nothing to me. You know?
Like, my brain just imagines a story where, like, the Jedi has a squire that is writing down everything that they're dictating, and they're just like, oh, this means nothing to me. And
yeah, imagine a young Jedi scribe Padawan who just is so bored, because that's the thing that you actually find in real world medieval manuscripts is notes in the margin saying things like, man, I hate the abbot who's running this monastery, because oh god.
We find a lot of that stuff in the old legends, the Jedi Code, or the Jedi Path book. There's a lot of scribblings like, I think this master was wrong about this, but we'll have to have this discussion later.
Right. So we also learn a little bit about the. So I'm going to combine a few different sections together because I have too much time on my hands and not enough time right now. There's a little bit about aligning, about a ritual of aligning yourself with the force of your crystal. So in the second phase of each star cycle, the Jedi has a chance to align their being with the force of their chosen crystal. Is one full phrase that I've cobbled together from a few different sources. And it's a reference, I think, to the same ritual that Anakin Skywalker used to change the color of Ahsoka's lightsaber crystals, and
I see that, yeah.
likewise what she used to purify crystals. That there's some sort of ritual process of sort of attuning to your lightsaber crystal. And I would love for that to get, I would love for them to get into that more.
Part of that was even mentioned in the experiments done by Galen Erso in his James Luceno book.
Catalyst. I'm currently reading it for the first time, so don't tell me too much.
All right, never mind. My bad.
No, I figured it would. I figured things about that would be in there. Yeah. So here's just a little meta commentary: is that I think that these props were designed early in the writing process for The Rise of Skywalker. And because that's often how this goes, is that you have to start designing the props well before the movie is ready to produce, like ready to start filming. And so these references, having so many references, literally every page of the Jedi texts seen in The Rise of Skywalker reference crystal alignment and lightsaber ignition. I think that some of Rey's struggles with fulfilling what she sees as her role as a Jedi had to do with repairing Luke's lightsaber, repairing Anakin's lightsaber, the Skywalker lightsaber, and or creating her own lightsaber, and that she would have struggled with that in an earlier version, or maybe she did struggle with that in between movies. And I just like getting this little bit of insight into what might have been an earlier idea. That does not mean that it almost happened in the movie.
I just love that this kind of also proves that there was a plan.
I mean, the thing is, you don't get to the end of making a movie without having some sort of plan.
Yeah, I wish more people knew that.
Yeah. Next slide. Okay. Yeah. So then there's just some all of my sources cited, and oh, that's right. Also, the compiler of the Ionomica, Riley Howell, was named in honor of Riley Howell, and you can look that up on Wikipedia for more information there. So next slide. I think we're skipping over several of the books because we don't have very good reference material for them, and we're moving on to JT05, which doesn't have a canonical name, but which we do see quite a bit of. It's the hero prop used in The Last Jedi.
Oh, okay.
So this is the one that Rey takes off the shelf and opens. I believe that at the time, this is the only one that had pages designed. So little is known about the history of JT05 before Luke Skywalker discovered it in the arms of a skeleton within the living sea of Gazian in 3 or 4 ABY. That's in one of the comics.
Yeah, the Star Wars 2020
Wars,
run where he talks to Elzar Man.
That's right. The front cover is made up of 3 hinged vertical panels. The first panel, counting from the spine, is decorated with the word Jedi written in the relatively modern Arabesh. The second is decorated with geometric pattern that does not appear to be linguistic in nature. And the third panel contains several symbols of unknown origin and meaning, which we will call Sarianan runes, as we looked at earlier. The pages within are written in an ancient calligraphic script and feature extensive gold illumination both in text and in decoration. Most of the pages show signs of extensive damage. Neither Arabesh nor the unknown symbols on the cover match the language of the book itself is written in, suggesting that this is not the original cover.
It could have been later translated into a modern text.
Or rebound.
Yes, I was going to say it used to be a paperback, but it was so popular that they gave us a hard edition.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard edition.
Yeah, this is the hardback version. Next slide. So known contents. There is the crest of the Jedi Order on the first page of the text, and it's possibly the earliest depiction of the winged blade of light or living sunrise ideogram that would later become the official crest of the Jedi Order. The use of such a potent religious symbol on its opening page, along with the presentation of the contents in such a uniformly illuminated style, and its lack of marginal annotations, suggests that this volume, in contrast to the Ionomica, was from its very conception intended to be a sacred work. I think that means that it was probably written later than many of the other than the Ionomica and the Ramagan. The most prominent images associated with JT05 are its diagram of planetary phases. It's unclear what planets they refer to or if they were meant to be taken literally at all. It is, of course, possible that they were representative of the light and dark sides of the Force in an extended religious metaphor.
Yeah.
Next slide.
I feel like I can arbitrarily assign meaning to the second and third word, and it's just Jedi Handbook. Please refer to your Jedi Handbooks on page 2.
So, Kitasekulian is the script here, and I'm not actually going to go through all of this, but I have given a transliteration of the text, assuming that my random letter assignments are correct, which they're not, but maybe someday. And so we can just flip through these pages to get a good look at them. This is the page. This is actually before damage. These are the concept art of the pages.
This is so cool.
And there's yeah, indeed.
I feel like I've heard some of these words before, either an incantation or something that the Night Sisters say.
The power of many.
That's the equivalent of stage whisper. I think they were chanting something, but for the audience sake, it was translated.
Ku hira ha kashira.
Oh, here's an interesting note for you on the acolyte witches chant. It is translated in a few different languages. If you watch it with different audio, it's not just in English, which means that maybe it's in basic. I don't know. It's just interesting. It's not in every language.
I think in universe they were chanting something, but for the sake of audience,
I go diegetic.
Yeah.
All right, next slide. So this is just going through all of the pages. I did this for every single page for some reason. Keep going. We're just going to blow right through these. These pages look really cool. They're all in the art book, the Art of the Last Jedi by Phil Shostak. And I recommend it.
It really does start looking like an ancient like grimoire. It's kind of like the what's it called in the MCU? The Darkhold.
Oh, Darkhold. Yeah.
Darkhold.
So actually, here's one. There's two more things to do with this text, because we don't know what its name is, but also because there's a very strange picture. There's a very strange picture from the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary. By 35 ABY, some pages of JT05 appear to have been removed from their binding. If you look at the upper left of this image, that's the binding. And on the lower right are some of the pages from it.
Caecilius ripped them out.
or maybe that's why it had to be rebound. The previous binding broke and some pages were loose and they couldn't put Humpty back together again.
Yeah, that really happens.
Side note, I now want, I don't know if it's an isekai anime or just like a D&D character, but someone who is from our world who loves Star Wars but gets placed into like a fantasy world where they're a wizard, and so their grimoire just looks like like one of these books.
Yeah. And
all their spells just mimic things that the Jedi could do, including turning their wand into a lightsaber. I'd be into that.
So getting into this, it's not clear if they've been what binding they've been put in, or if it's temporary or if it's long term. This is an image from Agent Kloss, but based on based on what I can see, I would guess that it's being put into JT02, although it could also be 07. Did Luke find these two volumes together? I don't think so. Now I need to remove that line. Or did Luke or Rey undo the binding on JT05 for some reason? And why were these pages removed? We don't know. As far as identification, it seems unlikely to me that JT05 is either of the named but unidentified Jedi texts. The organized layout of its contents and religious scientific focus would seem out of place with a chronicle, making it an unlikely candidate for the Chronicles of Bruce Boo. It is possible that this is Poetics of a Jedi. However, Poetics is described as a thin folio for which there are better candidates among the library.
Yeah, it seemed very heavily like graphic. Not graphic in the sense of like, R rating. But graphics heavy with like, it's kind of like an infograph book.
Yeah, it's definitely very picture oriented. Of the Jedi text, this one would probably be the best page turner.
Yeah.
The cover is closely based on concept art by James Carson, and the interior pages were designed by Chris Kittisacool, a name I still can't say. At least 3 copies of JT05 were created for The Last Jedi, which you can see in the documentary The Director and the Jedi around the 56-minute mark.
That's cool.
Because hero props in movies frequently get multiple copies in case one of them breaks or they need to change something about it. They have extras. So next slide. So now we're at JT06. which is the Ionomicum 2. This is the second part of Riley Howell's 2-volume set. At some point, parts of the Ionomicum were duplicated and stored in... Oh, sorry, I already had that. Both volumes came into Jedi Master Luke's possession, and at some point, the spine of Ionomicum 2 was expanded or replaced. By 28 ABY, the spine was carved with lettering in Arabesh and High Galactic. If you read along the spine, you can see the name Martin, spelled Martyn, which does happen to be the name of a prop builder for the movie, and also MD, which are his initials. I forgot to actually spell that out. So the known contents, we have writing from Master Mott Corbett, expounding upon his dictum, "What is without," written vertically in Taiwanese. We can't see it closely enough to actually decipher it, and most of the page is obscured, as you can see here. There's also a note containing Protobesh inserted on the same page.
Oh, is that obscured by another book?
Yes, it's obscured by the Ionomicum 1, actually. And that's it. Actually, I should say that the Ionomica comes from probably Greek roots for Book of Life, roughly, in the same way that Necronomicon is a book of death. The Ionomica is books of life. I forgot to say that. And I think that the Taiwanese that's labeled in the visual dictionary is probably actually just Protobesh again. But since it's blurry, you just have to, take Pablo Hidalgo's word for it. Next slide, please.
Daxon's already found and downloaded all of your fonts.
Good. Cool.
Make sure to give him credit.
Please do. Yeah, feel free to credit me or not. I like it when I get credit, and let me know what you use them for. I always love to see what people make with stuff. So then we get to the most detailed book. This is the hero prop used for The Rise of Skywalker. Most of what we see of the Jedi texts comes from the Ramagan in the movies. The Ramagan was written before 5000 BBY and it is written primarily in the Protobesh script with few known exceptions. At least some of the text is in Koramaic. The original book was widely thought to have been destroyed more than 5 millennia ago until it was rediscovered by Luke among the ruins of Ossus. Interestingly, some illustrations contained in the Ramagan may only be 4,000 years old on pages which make several references to the planet Exegol, a rumored stronghold of the Sith in the unknown regions. Were these pages written after the book's presumed destruction? Again, these are problems for Pablo Hidalgo to figure out, I'm sure. Luke has also made annotations to the Ramagan, journaling his search for the Emperor's Wayfinder. And the pages and spine of the Ramagan are made of Uneti wood, and its cover is made of red clay pressed from interstellar gases.
That's dope.
Oh, that's cool.
Also, that's meant to be a depiction of an eye, and we'll come back to that if we go to the next slide. So, the known contents of the Ramagan are many. We have the 4 origins, 4 conflicting origin stories of the cosmos, the Force, and the Jedi, along with the precepts derived from those stories. recorded by author or authors unknown over 5,000 years ago. The fourth precept, a poem that describes gods battling in the primeval universe, describes an omniscient eye, which is depicted on the cover of the book. And
I made an entire theory based on the fourth precept.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a moment. I think on the last slide of this section. So there's at least one chapter written by Clee the Elder, and this chapter may be part of the For Origin section, or it may be a later commentary. It's not clear. It says, the Prime is one, but the Jedi are many. The Sith were many, but often emerge ruled by two. The seeds of the Jedi have been sown throughout the galaxy on Ossus, Jedha, Zengsiar, and others. The Sith have no seeds, since what they bury does not grow. They are the despoilers of worlds and have laid waste once fertile habitats, such as Korriban, Ziost, Ixigul, Asog, and others. And notable there are the use of two ancient names for places that we now know with different canonical modern names. There might be more, but I'm not familiar with every planet.
I mean, Ziost too makes me very happy to see.
Where is Ziost from? Darth Choco?
Ziost is a planet that was that had its force ability sapped away with a dark side ritual. In SWTOR.
Wow.
Was that during Shadows of Revan?
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah, I still have yet to play or read a lot of Old Republic stuff from Legends, and so there are some things that are lost on me here. So it's great to know that actually is a meaningful one. But
it's when you play the game, you actually go there before the ritual happens, and you get to see the devastation. You're there when it happens and see the devastation afterwards. It's pretty cool.
Well, they've laid waste to it.
Yeah, well, the Sith did that over 5,000 years ago, apparently. Since it's written about here. But Korriban, we now know as Moraband, famously renamed by George Lucas because he liked Moraband better. And Exegol here is rendered as Ixigul, which would be easier to pronounce in the Sith language of Ur-Katat than Exegol would be. Notes on Sith navigational tech also exist in this book. I'm glad that everybody who's here is here.
Absolutely. We're all a bunch of nerds.
Yeah. Notes on Sith navigational tech, apparently added sometime after the disappearance and presumed destruction of the Ramagan, circa 5000 BBY, by author or authors unknown, because we are explicitly told that these illustrations are over 4,000 years old, which is not over 5,000 years old. And since the book disappeared 5,000 years ago, that means that they've been added since then. It's possible that they actually fell into the hands of that this book actually fell into the hands of the Sith.
I mean, it is highly probable, as the Sith were known to try and get their hands on some of these things. I mean, that's probably why it went missing.
Right, and that's my working theory, is that the Sith stuff that's in here is maybe written by Sith or by adherents to the Sith.
Is Cormaic an analog for a real life language, or was that an in-universe name given?
That is an in-universe name given. It's it's some passages that are written in the Proto-Besh script are labeled as being Koramaic. And I asked Pablo Hidalgo about this once, and he very kindly answered that he thinks of Koramaic as the language and Proto-Besh as the script.
I see the name and I think about like an ancient language of the core worlds. Or
Yeah, I think that's what it's supposed to evoke, because it's related to our name for like Aramaic,
yeah,
which is an ancient language, and then but then relating it back to the core and to planets that have core in the name and are also near the core, like Corellia and Coruscant.
yeah.
I would imagine that there is some connection there. So
I wonder if there's a connection with the old name of Coruscant, which is Legends, not canon. Notron?
maybe, I'm not sure. I haven't seen it, but I will keep a lookout for that. So Koramaic passages concerning deep space dangers in the galactic barrier, a cartouche containing the name Exegol alongside a detailed illustration of a Sith wayfinder, and the insignia of the Sith eternal cult. Abstract hyperspace map to Exegol, I think that's added later. Illustration of paired wayfinders, Exegol symbology, star chart extrapolations, and bosonic diagrams. Also contained are Luke's notes, likely added between 4 and 28 ABY, or possibly later, documenting the search for the Emperor's Wayfinder, written by Jedi Master Luke Skywalker. These include illustrated studies of the Wayfinder and possible configurations, notes describing his concerns that the Emperor's troves of Sith and Jedi artifacts would be dangerous if they fell into the hands of nefarious agents, and his concerns about a disturbance he felt in the Force while tracking Ochi of Bestoon, and an amended hyperspace map connecting Octo with the route to Exegol.
Okay. I like how Luke, like these. So it says in the visual dictionaries that a lot of these, if not all of them, were thought to be lost for 2,000 years, and that means Luke's notes would be the most contemporary notes of any Jedi, and even surpassing that of Yoda. So Yoda's like, read them of you.
Right. So Luke read parts of some of them, is what I gather.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is certainly the most contemporary, unless some of the notes are also by Rey, which wouldn't surprise me.
That's true.
Also, notably, Ben Solo has a calligraphy set, so there may even be notes written by Ben Solo in some of these texts.
That's cool.
I assume he just wrote his own dark poetry.
I mean, maybe so. Also, actually, one more note is that Ben Solo's calligraphy set originally belonged to Obi-Wan Kenobi, with which he wrote his journal, which leads me to think that it's possible that he had in his possession at least one Jedi text. But we don't know about that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the majority of the Ramagan is written in Proto-Besh, which means that we can translate it. So this upper left corner says, once your lightsaber is assembled, crystal must be force aligned or the blade will not ignite.
Yeah.
In the lower left, we have, in the second phase of each star cycle, the Jedi is offered the chance to align their being with the force of their chosen crystal. At this stage, the crystal is most volatile, and something. Then there's also some partially obscured notes that break canon a little bit, or creatively expand on canon. We've got Star and Space Boo again. We also have Stana Stairlift right to the top of the stairs. And that's an actual real world brand of mobility aid for getting up the stairs. It's the Stana Stairlift.
That's just the prop guys having fun.
Yep. And then there's Barry Homeowner, which I tracked down and is a reference to a comical character from a British podcast about sports.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just love the name Barry Homeowner.
Yeah, and that's canon now. That's Jedi Master Barry Homeowner to you.
Is he part of an association?
I'm not sure.
It's still better than Master Douglas, you know? Or I'm a gun die.
Yeah. Next slide. So these are the pages that we can actually see in the movie. So here we have some Tythonian algebra. Not sure what it means. We have more about the alignment, more about crystals and being most volatile at this stage. Next page.
It's very heavily focused on crystals. And
yeah, it seems to be.
Is this formula the theory of everything we know?
Well, it's probably related to crystals again.
It's true.
Maybe. But it might just be crystal stuff.
When people are attuning and they're closing their eyes, they're not like using the force. They're doing 2 + 3 + 2.
Uh-huh. Oh, which part was breaking canon? Oh, it's just adding a bunch of names that are real world things that then have to be reconciled with canon.
It's the same thing as New York.
Oh yeah. Do they have a solution for that, or have we just ignored?
It's never addressed.
New York is a city in Alderaan. I don't know.
So split pieces can no longer be used to channel the force, and failed pieces are highly volatile and therefore illegal to
Tell that
trade.
to Cal Kestis.
They're therefore illegal to trade. Pieces are traded amongst the smugglers and black marketeers as a power source.
Yeah.
And then, although common, it is KRC4, which maybe that's some type of kyber crystal. Although common is often and easily misaligned, split pieces can no longer something, again, repeating itself. There's a lot of repeated text. We get "this means nothing to me" again. And next slide, please. This page is from one of the visual guides. From the Rise of Skywalker at the Visual Dictionary. We have Burkean cursive again, and more Tythonian algebra, and phase 1, and more stuff about the black marketeers.
Yeah.
And it's mostly more of the same. Next slide.
Yeah, I feel like they came up with a bunch of like blocks of text and then kind of copy and pasted it.
Yeah, I mean, what's remarkable to me is that a lot of it is not actually copied and pasted. Some of it is, but a lot of it is re-handwritten every single time, in order to have different layouts and effects. So, in place of an exhaustive comparison between the canonical and apocryphal contents of the Jedi texts, this direct comparison is given as an illustration. This is how this hero page from the Ramagan is labeled in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary on the left, compared with a more accurate labeling of the literal contents of the prop. So on the left, we have cascading Coromaic text regarding the galactic barrier, and in actuality, it's about lightsaber ignition. Skywalker's inserted notes describing his concerns, and instead we have notes regarding lightsaber assembly and crystal alignment. We have Skywalker's illustrated studies of the Wayfinder. It's not clear if these are his illustrations or if they are of a Wayfinder. So I've rendered them as illustrations of tetrahedrons, which shows the limitations of going with the literal reading also. At the bottom, we have Coromaic text, warning of deep space dangers. In fact, it exactly duplicates the opposite page. That one is copied and pasted. In the upper right, we have a Proto-Besh cartouche containing the name Exegol. In fact, it contains the word courage, and that was actually one of the first words that I was trying to translate. It does not say Exegol. At some point, I will probably redraw all of this to a version that contains the actual text that it's supposed to contain.
Can an argument be made that the word Exegol in some language means courage?
That is a fair assumption to make. You can't fix everything that way, but that actually reminds me of the solution that they came up with for Jabesk, Simon Jabesk. Are you familiar with the Naboo security officer pilot Simon Jabesk?
Is that the guy that teaches Anakin to pilot the Nubian?
It's not.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. That's Rick Ollier.
Yeah.
No, Simon Jabesk is a weird case where there's a what do you call it? There's a helmet in one of the visual dictionaries for the prequel era that has an arrow pointing at a helmet that says that it says the pilot's name, Jabesk. But then later fans decrypted the Naboo writing systems, and it actually says Simon, which is a much less sci-fi sounding name. And so what they did in future editions of the book, or when referencing the same photo in the future, is that they renamed the character Simon Jabesk.
Makes sense.
To account for the discrepancy between what they said before and what. So, are we in the process of making Exegol a translation of a word for courage? That's possible.
Yeah. Or a Sith Lord called Exegol Courage.
Yeah, also possible. Next slide, please. So the Ramagan was also named by Rian Johnson in an early draft of The Last Jedi. The filler hero and filler pages were designed by Dan Burke. It shares at least some content with the Ionomica. It refers to Stannis Stairlift and Barry Homeowner. Klee the Elder was invented by author Michael, I don't know how to say his last name, Koga?
Yeah, it's
Kogi?
probably Kogue.
Kogue. The fourth precept, canonically a poem, is named for a standalone comic by Stephen Martinier appearing in Star Wars Visionaries, a visual tone poem consisting of symbolic illustrations without concrete narrative structure.
Oh.
To the right is a slide, or is a full page spread from that comic, from the fourth precept.
I want to read that.
Which and since the fourth precept is supposed to depict primordial gods fighting over the balance of the force, I can confirm that that is what the comic depicts.
That's awesome.
I highly recommend reading that.
Do you think if if Lucas got his sequel and it was that microbiotic world of the midichlorians, we would have seen some anthropomorphic midichlorians like these?
I have no idea. I have no idea what we would have seen.
Because it's funny to imagine this comic being a depiction of primordial gods fighting over the balance of the force, and that in and of itself resulting in, let's say, the Star Wars Big Bang, right? And all of their matter from this battle turned into midichlorians, you know, and the biggest concentration of midichlorians happened to be the Force planet where the Wills like came to be. Kind of like how if you read the Silmarillion and you read how the Valar were made.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the Force planet, all of the midichlorians gathered there, and joy, serenity, and all of the Wills were kind of like semi celestial,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a result of the battle.
Yeah, well, I recommend you read the comic and then add to your interpretation of the fourth precept. And I think that
could be interesting.
I think that the big circle in the center of this is the all-seeing eye, represented
On the cover of the book.
On the cover of this book. And I love that they made a connection back to this not even canonical graphic novel. The Star Wars Visionaries project was kind of like Star Wars Visions is now,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just letting artists go wild and make their own Star Wars work. I have two more pictures, I think, in the folder reference.
Yes.
And these are ones that didn't make it into the slide. So there's this book with a very recognizable spine. I believe I can't remember which number it is. Let me just check real quick so that I don't talk out of turn. Okay, so JT03. Here gets read partially by C-3PO. We only get a few lines from it. We get, the Force is the light. The Force is the dark. Jedi choose the light for all that it reveals. And that's all that we know of the content of JT03. And so we can extrapolate potentially. I would say that this sounds like it could be Poetics of a Jedi.
Yeah.
And Rey also seems to like it, which supports it being Poetics of a Jedi.
I just like the day and night of like her face in the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh yeah, I love it.
And then what was the other one? Next slide. That's right. So this is also the only clear picture of one of the other ones. Shoot, which one is that?
Is that the omniscient eye?
Oh, so that is Rey holding the Ramagon, yep, with the all-seeing eye on the cover, and next to it in the box is JT07, which seems to have a depiction of star maps on it on the cover in a raised, like braille-like texture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we know about the Jedi texts, I think.
This has been awesome, though. Yeah.
Round of
Chat.
applause for Ender, chat.
Appreciate it.
Anybody that's watching right now,